Okay, hey, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today, a really cool review for you guys from their brand Squale. A little about them. They were established back in 1950. They are Swiss made. Yes, they are a Swiss brand. And the word squall is actually French for shark. Yes, I know the Italian word for shark is squale. And I know that since the brand was originally launched, have now switched under to new ownership. That was actually their Italian distributor within the Magi family, and they pronounce it Squale, but they didn't rename it Squale. It's still Squale. There's no problem with them pronouncing it Squale with an accent if you're Italian and you're speaking it with an accent, just like the world famous TGV, hugely influential on YouTube to the point to where now everyone thinks that they need to say Squale, even if you don't have an accent. So I just want to get that out there before everybody dives into the comment section to kill me on my squall pronunciation. Guys, the French word for shark is squall. The brand is Swiss made. The word is pronounced French. It's the French pronunciation. That's what it was named when it was established. There's nothing wrong with saying squale. And if you pronounce it Squale, that's fine. It's fine also that Daniel Craig as James Bond 007 pronounced Omega, in the movie Casino Royale because he has a British accent. That's completely fine. But I don't think, James Bond needs you to let him know to pronounce it Omega and not Omega, and vice versa for Squall versus Squale. So now that that's out of the way, let's get back to the brand. They are a heritage micro brand with high quality retro and vintage inspired upper entry level to mid tier pieces, really specializing within the space of dive watches and innovating over the years. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for a dive watch. Of course, you want to have water resistance, simply some type of screw down crown. You want something that's tough, legible with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. This is their Montauk 300m in the copper dial configuration with the optional beads of rice bracelet added, and it is a LongIslandWatch.com exclusive model that was originally released in 2020, now back in a new iteration offering even more value in a vintage inspired Swiss made dive watch pedigree type of piece, which is great. Now, the name Montauk is actually a popular tourist destination in the East End of Long Island, New York, known for its beaches, fishing, and strong Atlantic surf. These go for $725 list on strap or $549 on sale, or you can also, of course, opt in to get that beads of rice bracelet separately for an additional $175, which out of the door would be $724 combined as configured as seen. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, I'm loving the aesthetic here. Of course, it's a very popular style when it comes to that retro big crown inspired layout. But of course, now you're getting it with a brand with a real heritage, not just within watchmaking, but specifically within dive watch pedigree, being a case maker for some of the biggest, brands of the day during that time when, of course, dive watches and the sport of recreational diving were all quite innovative and cutting edge and very new. They were there blazing a trail. So very cool for me anyway, in terms of that heritage connection to Squale and their illustrious past. Now, when it comes to the dimensions here, 38 millimeters in diameter, which is nice. And then you get 39.3 across the bezel. So for those of you that might think 38 is a little small, I will say things to consider. The bezel does protrude slightly and have a slight overhang, making it visually appear a bit larger. Also, this dial is nice and open. So with that wider opening and thinner bezel, it means that the proportions are going to visually look a bit larger. So even though you have a nice compact silhouette physically end to end in terms of just the numbers on paper, I will say in the metal, in practice, when you have this piece in hand or on the wrist, it's going to feel like it has enough visual punch there for those of you with larger wrists like myself at 7.5 inches, which we'll get to. Now, the thickness, or I should say thinness here, is 12 millimeters, guys. Very nice, especially considering this is a 300-meter diver, although it has the aesthetic of something you would totally be fine with maybe having 100 meters or 150 meters, or even 200 meters, I'd say would be pretty standard idea for a skin diver made, within modern times. But the fact that they were able to get 300 meters out of this watch just means that it's built to a very nice tolerance, which I can appreciate. Also, the lug to lug on here is amazing. It's only 45.8 millimeters, guys. So very compact. Let me give it a quick little wipe here because it does have some polished surfaces. And I think that actually all adds to that retro aesthetic. You're imagining having this, of course, on your wrist at the surf, at the beach, glistening beads of water flowing off of this beads of rice bracelet, reflecting off of the beautiful sky, whether you're at sunset, sunrise, or midday. This thing is going to look quite good thanks to that mixed, and the juxtaposition of satin brushed against really nice organic flowing, high polished surfaces as well. Now, the crystal is a flat sapphire, which actually makes it feel a little bit more modern in that regard, and a little bit more balanced. And you might find something that might be a little bit more dedicated to really going all in on a vintage aesthetic that might have went for some type of top hat, bubble dome, or, a box dome, which is one of my favorite types. But the good thing is with this flat sapphire, it means that there's less things to go wrong and your crystal is going to be relatively a bit more protected, a little bit more low profile for those of you that like that thinness at 12 millimeters. That's including the crystal, right? A lot of times brands will give you the thickness, but it's not counting the crystal. So yeah, this thing is going to be nice and svelte and slim and easy to slide under a cuff for more versatile daily wear. Also, you're going to have a beautifully done screw down crown, nicely signed with that Von Buren family logo there. And then here you're going to have a very nice, nice action on the bezel. The grip is going to be quite traditional, with that, kind of Submariner style there. And it's also going to be polished, which is nice visually, but I'd say tactile engagement makes it a little bit slippery. But the nice thing is once you get the right angle on it, the right grip, it rips, right? It has a great sound, nice tactile clicks, still quite smooth. But then, again, you do have an overhang here. So this is going to be kind of where you're going to want to bank when it comes to finger placement if you are going to be fidgeting with this or, using it, at any time. The nice thing is once it's set well and it's not going anywhere. So of course, in terms of it being a timing device, sorry, I'm going to give it a quick little wipe off here. As terms of being used as a timing device, absolutely functional there. And it also gives you a nice amount of feedback that I think, isn't going to bother anybody. Sometimes these clicks can be pretty harsh. I'm talking to you, Oris. My Aquis, I tell you what, as great as a watch that is, the clicks, they're just a bit harsh in comparison. And then, on the other side of the spectrum, you have something like a Seiko bezel action, which sometimes can feel a bit mushy by a lot of people's standards, but it's so smooth, so it's like finding something in the middle is always kind of where I try to be at. In this case, this is a pretty decent space in terms of being still quite smooth, while also being quite clicky without being like aggressive or harsh. Now, next on, guys, although we cannot see the movement through this solid case back here, but I do want to show the case back, even though it does have that sticker on it, because this is, this was kindly loaned in by Mark from Long Island Watch. Guys, you have a solid case back. You see the shark logo there for Squale. Very nice. You got the little wave pattern. This is very cool. And inside of that, you're going to have your Swiss Sellita SW200. And it works, guys. It's a workhorse movement, and I get it. I don't want to argue against it. It is what it is, and it does its job. It has a 40-hour power reserve, a 4 hertz sweep, guys, 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of the beat rate. So that is nice and smooth, and it's doing its thing, and you're not worried about it. And in terms of Swiss-made divers, it's nice to be able to still get that smooth 4 hertz sweep, because many modern divers that are comparable in price to this, like whether you be going to Mito or Certina or anywhere else within the Swatch Group, even Hamilton Divers, a lot of times those watches, they've toned down the beat rate. They're taking it down to 3 hertz sweep, which is going to be similar to a Seiko, so that they can elongate that power reserve, so you can get that Powermatic 80. You're getting 80 hours of power reserve, right? Here, you're going to get about half the power reserve, but you're going to get that smooth sweep. So depending on your priorities, on if you're going to be wearing the watch in high or low rotation, or if you like rewinding your watch or anything like that, hand winding it, engaging with it, that's up to you, but something to definitely consider. I consider it as a positive. Now, getting into the dial layout, Sunray copper dial, no date, printed index, of course, but you do have the applied indices at the cardinal marks of 12, 3, 6, and 9. Also, polished hands are illumined. You're getting C3 Swiss Supernova. Again, 300 atmospheres or 300 meters of water resistance, which for me, extra bonus. I would have been happy with 200. I would have been still happy with 150. At 100, I would have been like, that's kind of the bare minimum in my mind when I'm thinking about more the robustness and build. Obviously, most people aren't going to be diving deeper than 40 meters recreationally anyway. The lugs, 20 millimeter lugs, guys. So really fantastic proportions on here. They don't seem too wide. They don't seem too dainty. For me, 20 millimeters is perfect. And it's going to go with all of your different straps and, textile straps, pass-through straps, rubber dive straps, all of that, leather straps even. I think this has the versatility to where you could put it on a nice vintage, Horween or something like that. And this would look great dressed up a bit, right? Especially with that copper salmony dial. Now, the bracelet is their newer beads of rice bracelet option. It does taper down to about 17.5 millimeters to this 19.6 millimeter semi-milled flip lock clasp with 4 positions of manual micro adjustment. Now, I say semi-milled because, yes, the outer portion is stamped and then the inner folding section is going to be milled. Also, you do have a nicely fully milled diver's extension there. And then in terms of micro adjustment, manual micro adjustment positions here, as you guys can see. So you're gonna be able to dial in the fit quite nicely, which is great. Of course, you want it to be comfortable, especially when you have something as comfortable as this when it comes to that actual execution. Also, guys, speaking of execution, screw pin construction. So nice and robust, nice and flowing. These are individually articulated links here, guys. So very, very nice in terms of the wear. But speaking of how the wear will be, let's go ahead and get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you guys can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this thing wears absolutely beautifully. That 12 millimeter thinness is very well done. You can see nice delineation in terms of there being a difference between the mid case, the case back that's protruding underneath, and of course that slightly proud bezel sitting atop. So when you look at the thickness of this watch, you're really just going to be seeing that mid case, and with that high polished surface on the side, that mid case is essentially going to be, disappearing and reappearing most of the time, whether it's reflecting off of your skin or from reflecting off of the environment that you're in. Looks really great, guys. Look at that profile. Ooh. Of course, guys, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens, you're going to get a fair amount of perspective distortion, and all of a sudden the watch is going to seem a lot bigger than it actually is. Look at that. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just tighten up the frame ever so slightly so that you guys can still get a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And now you can see, guys, look at how well centered that is and how much more all of a sudden of the beads of rice bracelet is going to be visible from the top down angle. And look at how handsome that is. Look at those nice curved organic lines on that flatter profile, but again, it has a nice organic curve so that it will just guide the bracelet around your wrist. So very organic, feels quite nice, just flows beautifully, guys. I'm definitely digging this one. What do you think? Let me know. You don't have to wait till the end of the video. What do you think about the on-wrist experience here? It's crazy how different it looked. Again, just because of the way that the focal length would affect the the way that you're going to be able to perceive the size on this. And again, don't be discouraged when you see stuff on Instagram and it's making you think that every watch is oversized. Guys, again, it's just the perspective, right? But in person, in real life, you're going to probably get something closer to this when you look down at this watch. And I wouldn't mind looking down at this watch a lot more often. Mark, if you're listening, I don't know, maybe we're going to have to discuss some type of negotiation so I can hold on to this bad boy a little bit longer. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here, guys. Hey, check that out. Very nice loom. Of course, that nice mixture of printed and applied indices looks absolutely fantastic. Very legible when you're just kind of considering it at a bit of just, at a passing glance, especially when you do have that loom pip there at 12 o'clock. So I think that looks great. And you know what? Sure, they could have loomed the entire thing, but I will say, I like to have less exposed loom because that stuff gets dirty, stained, and patinas, and I like to keep it nice and clean. So, I'd rather manage just one loom pip at the 12 versus trying to keep everything clean and pristine, especially on a piece like this where you're not going to have any type of faux patina. But one thing I always like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, guys. And this thing looks gorgeous. Look at the uniformity of the light as it glides over the satin brushing, as it manages its way over the glossiness from the high polished surfaces. That dial quite dynamic with that sun ray finish there, going from different shades there, different tones, but always, kind of playing within that copper salmony tone, but also still being quite legible thanks to a high contrast because of how bold the markers are, because of how bold the handset is. So very nice, very legible, but also I do want to show just how dynamic this thing is out in the world while you're moving, while the light source is moving, changing and shifting there, guys. It's not just about a pitch black loom shot. It's also about how it's going to look in that transitional lighting, which this one does really well. All right, so closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, simple retro looks, solid build quality, and comfortable ergonomics all come together in a well-balanced package, ideal for versatile daily wear. So I think Mark really nailed it, at Long Island Watch with this particular project and collab. In terms of model variants, definitely check the site links for current options and availability as these kind of come and go in batches. And, of course, anything that I can do to help get the word out on these pieces and support Mark as really a legend within not just the watch space, but just the watch YouTube space in particular, right? Great guy, lent this piece in, and, just fantastic to work with as always. So big shout out to longislandwatch.com, which is the only place where you can find this particular dive watch. And yes, you can find other divers with a similar aesthetic, guys. But I mean, again, you compare this, when you think about comparable models, right? Swiss made heritage and US-based purchasing experience, right? From Mark, from Long Island Watch, from one of the most trusted sellers within the enthusiast community, at a price point, honestly, similar to upstart microbrands with less proven track records, right? Even in terms of some of their spec sheets, right? Like, there's a lot of microbrands that are out there that are going to give you this watch, are similar to it, I should say, right? Similar aesthetic for around the same price, but they're going to have the Miyota movement, which is great. But if you prefer Swiss, boom, there you go. And, you prefer not to have that rotor wobble or something like that. That could also be a factor. Also, a lot of times, some of those other micro brands are recapturing and recreating a certain aesthetic that they didn't necessarily have any part in producing. Whereas Squale, right? This brand goes way back, and they actually were a part of creating that legacy of dive watches, this retro aesthetic in particular, that is so, back in vogue today. So I think that adds extra layers of value, maybe not on a spec sheet, but then, hey, talking of spec sheets, 300 meters of water resistance, Swiss made movement, Swiss made construction, right? Applied indices, loomed pip there. So I don't know. There's just there's a lot here. So for me, guys, if I just sum it up, bottom line, Squale are known for their market sweet spot, right? They just hit it. And they're combining both Swiss-made quality and design with genuine heritage and offering it at an extremely approachable price point, considering the specs, guys. I mean, we have to consider the specs, right? Like, no, this isn't a cheap watch, you know, and of course that's on a sliding scale. But considering the specs, this is quite value rich, which I think is great. And this is just another great example of that great value forward offering that they offer that also gets you a ton of style for not a lot of money. So with all that said, let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.